General Counsel, is there a quorum?
Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Good morning. I am calling to order the March 2023 meeting of the IHCDA Board of Directors. We are meeting pursuant to this board's policy for participation by members of the IHCDA Board of Directors in board meetings by simultaneous electronic communication. This means that only 3 members must be physically present at the site of the meeting and the remaining members may call in. There will also be an audio feed for the general public so that members of the public can listen to the meeting, and there will be a link to a video recording posted on IHCDA's website next month. At the time the motions are being made, each board member that makes a motion must state his or her first and last name for the record. The votes will then be tallied by roll call. I will now take a roll call of the board members to confirm members who are present and their location. Ann Valentine, designee for Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, present and in the room. Mark Pascarella, designee for State Public Finance Director Dan Hughey.
Present in Indianapolis.
Board member Daniel Elliott, Treasurer of State.
President in the room.
Thank you. Board member June Midkiff.
She's muted.
You're muted. June.
Present remote.
Thank you. Board member Andy Place Senior.
Present remote.
Board member G. Michael Schaffmeyer.
Present in Evansville, Indiana, remote.
Board member Tom McGowan. Absent. Okay. I think first up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the February 23rd, 2023 board meeting. Any
Please, motion for approval.
motion for approval? Do we have a second?
I'll second. Mark Pascarella, second.
And the first was that Andy? Thank you.
Pardon?
Just want to confirm that. We have a motion and a second. I will now take the roll. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
Daniel Elliott.
Aye.
June Midkiff.
Aye.
Andy Place.
Aye.
Michael Schaffmeyer.
Aye.
And Valentine votes aye. Minutes are approved unanimously. Next, please welcome Hayden Weisinger, who will present the Mullen Flats Board memo.
Good morning, board. We have before you a developer fund request, just a little background. Mullen Flats was awarded.
Can't hear.
And speak up.
Back in November of 2021 in the 2022 tax credit round. This project consists of 42 units of new permanent support housing in Terre Haute. In June of last year, the project developer came to us requesting a gap financing. They were awarded $500,000 in housing trust fund through our gap financing policy. The developer then came back to us indicating an additional $750,000 that was needed to fill a remaining gap. And as a result, they have submitted a $750,000 request for a development fund loan as of February 22nd of this year. Per the supplementary funding procedures that we do, request met all the guidelines of the QAP. But also as per the QAP, any coming back to us with an additional financing request does make the developer subject to sanctions for coming back for an additional request outside of their original gap policy request. So per this, we made the developer aware that they would be subject to sanctions. They were fully aware of this when they applied. I believe when they submitted the request, they got ahead and said we don't know that we subject to sanctions going forward, the 1-year suspension. But the request itself, everything was fine with that. It met our underwriting guidelines. It was underwritten for the $750,000 at 1.5% for 15 years. Which is consistent with the rest of our development fund loans we've done in the past. If approved, Mental Health America of West Central Indiana and ALK Development, which are the developer and co-developer for this project, will be ineligible to request IHCDA capital funding sources for a period of 1 year per the sanctions of returning for an additional gap funding request outside of the original gap funding policy. This 1 year suspension will occur commencing of the date of this memo. And furthermore, a fine of $48,750 will be assessed as well. And I will pause for any questions.
Board, do we have questions for Hayden?
Yeah, I have one. So whenever we're doing a project, one of the things we look at is if we're going to send out an additional loan of 750,000, or what guarantees do we have that this completes it? Because my fear is we loan out 750,000 and they say, well, actually we need an additional 600,000 and we can't complete the project without it. And then the project sits idle because they obviously can't come back here.
So as with any other requests, we do look at it. I think with this project in particular, there were additional cost increases as it continued to lag in closing. So for this one in particular, that's why they came back with an additional gap. But are you asking more in retrospect, how do we approach?
Well, what are my assurance that this is going to complete the project? Because my fear is we give them money, project doesn't get completed because of, they say, well, gee, 750, you do it. Because honestly, they came back for 500 and that ended up not being enough. So now they come back for an additional 750.
Yeah.
So now we're saying, okay, well, now you come back for an additional 1.25. How do we know that 1.25 gets you to complete the project?
Yeah. So, I mean, with all of them, we take everything that they've given us from the numbers that they are providing us. So if it were to come back to where, what our underwriting says that if we give them the 750, if there were at this point, I mean, it hasn't closed, so we have not officially sent out anything yet. Jake, you might know a little bit more on this, where if we approve this and then they did come back with a further gap, I would, based on what I've seen previously, it just wouldn't move forward.
I think the bigger question here is when are they going to
Do not know that.
So I know under like our gap program, they have 30 days for board approval, 60 days to get the deal closed. And if not, then we recapture the funds, we'll resend it. So I don't know. I mean, to your point, Mark, we could, I don't know in this situation if we have communicated a 60-day, 40-day period. Those are that we could put that condition on it. Normally, that's how we do with some of these supplemental dollars. Is we'll put a timeline of you have to close within the next 2 months from board approval. And if not, then we'll resend it the funds because they do have to demonstrate that they're ready to close. Right. I think that's the main point we're trying to get to here is how do we know that this deal is going to close and not be out there for another 12 months?
Yeah, because if it doesn't close and we can't get our revenues back on the loan because they're not going to have any revenue. So therefore,
the costs are going to continue to rise if you don't close within the next 60 days or so. And then to your point, all the financing and underwriting that we've done then go down the window because it's expired. So how do we make sure? I think that's the bigger question.
Yeah.
Okay, like how do we know that this deal or what benchmarks do we have in place to ensure this deal gets closed?
And we do have the, with this one being a 22 award, they should be getting close to, if they would have probably already, I'd have to check if they have already refreshed their credits, but seeing that it is 2023 now, they would have had to have done a credit refresh, so they'd have within a year at this point. I'm blanking on the exact extension it would have been, which is 12 months from when you're awarded.
So could we, if we decide to approve this, could we simply put in an addendum to the resolution saying they have 60 days to close? I think that would.
Yeah, or are we ready to know, do we know that for sure that they're going to close in 60 days? If not, then we might want to postpone this to the board until we know that this deal is ready to close.
I myself do not know off the top of my head what their timeline is for closing. So
So if the board is concerned about closing within 60 days, which I think is very valid, then we might want to push this off and not take a vote on it until we know that that issue has been resolved, if they know that they have to close within 60 days of this approval. That's just I mean, yeah, like I defer to the board on this one.
Right.
No, it's-
I feel, just personal opinion, I feel comfortable with that prognosis, because I would just like to hear them say, yes, we're close to closing. This 750 gets us to where we need to be.
Right.
We're gonna close, revenue streams will start coming in, I'll just start to pay back. And I feel more comfortable. I feel like if we just approve it, then without any like idea of when they're gonna close, or if they're gonna close, or how close they're even getting to closing, I feel like we're kind of skimming a blanket. Yeah, sure, here's the money without any understanding of where they are
Yeah,
at.
because-
And they're clearly demonstrating trouble because they're coming back.
Yeah.
And I understand why. This isn't me trying to put them down. I understand the marketplace. I understand costs have been escalating fast. So I understand that, but I need to get to closing. And
Right.
that's where I'm at.
That sounds like a motion.
So the motion is delay till
To
next month.
postpone
Okay.
this
No,
agenda.
that
A
works.
confirmation of the closing date.
That helps us then know when we do, because we haven't run into these these don't come up very often.
Right.
And when they do come up, then we do know that the board's precedence being set is that these deals need to be ready to close, and we're going to provide additional gap financing within 60 days.
And traditionally, it would be flipped. They would have gotten development fund already, and then would be asking for TCAP, which has the 60-day closing
But
deadline.
I think that's fair, or, yeah, so, I mean, that's a good precedent for the board to set. I agree.
No, I think that's where we're at. So I mean, really, the question is, do we need to read the resolution or make a new motion, or do we just kind of
I think table it.
table it? I think,
Do we-
The general counsel.
Do we need a motion to table this? since
Not
it's-
necessarily. What you could do is he could read the resolution, then you could deny it. And then in your discussion, you could do that. But best thing to do is table the whole thing
Yeah.
and not finish it and just table it.
yeah, that's where I feel most comfortable, because I don't want to
Do we
be
need a motion to
denial.
Table, or is it just the,
The cleanest way is to do a motion.
okay. Do I have a motion to table this discussion?
I will, do I need to make it, or do I second?
Make it.
I'll make the motion to table this matter.
I'll second.
There you go.
Mark?
Mark Pascarella tables, makes motion to table.
Daniel Elliott, second.
Second,
And then we take a roll on that motion?
yes.
Thank you. I will now take a roll. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
Daniel Elliott.
Aye.
June Midkiff.
Aye.
Andy Place.
Aye.
Michael Schaffmeyer.
Aye.
Ann Valentine votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, Megan Herbert, am I getting it?
Yeah.
Herbert, who will now present the Creating Places Program funding and delegated authority.
Morning, thank you, board. I'm here to request funding for another year of the Creating Places program. I am going to do a brief presentation just to do some programmatic updates. Appreciate you being willing to move to that. That's great. Here for a second for that to get loaded up. Thank you. All right, so just wanted to provide a brief programmatic program update, like I said, to share with you a little bit of the great work that has gone on since our last update in July of 2022. So very briefly, the Creating Places program began in 2016. It's an innovative community development program that we work in partnership with a company called Patronicity that hosts an online crowdfunding platform. Across the state, nonprofits and local units of government can apply to fundraise for public placemaking projects that are accessible to the public. And they raise a goal of between $5,000 and $50,000 on Patronicity's website towards their placemaking project. If they are successful and within a 30 to 60-day campaign window, then they receive a dollar-for-dollar match grant from IHCDA. So if they raise $5,000, or if their goal is $5,000 and they are successful in raising that $5,000, then we will match it with $5,000. Wanted to give you a sense of our program stats from year 1 through year 7 in total. So Some things to notice. We've seen nearly 200 projects, and we've maintained a 96% campaign success rate since July, when I last updated the board. We have 187 successful campaigns. IHCDA has granted about $6.4 million to this program since its inception. But for every dollar that IHCDA grants, communities leverage about $4.21 in both crowdfunded dollars and other leveraged grants and funding. I wanted to give you a view of our geography, where we are represented across the state. Creating Places has about 70% statewide coverage in 64 counties. Since my last update, we have one new county in county, and then we do have 2 currently live campaigns in 2 new counties as well. On a slightly more granular level, you can find Creating Places projects in 99 unique communities across the state. We've had 13 new towns and cities since the last update, and what's really unique about this program is that of those 13 new communities, 4 of them were in towns of 1,000 people or less, and 11 of the 13 were in communities of 4,000. So we're really proud of the fact that this program is available and accessible to communities large and small. I also wanted to give you a sense of not only where we've been, but where we're going. So those counties that you now see highlighted are counties in which we have pipeline projects lined up and eager to crowdfund. So that includes Blackbird, Park, Boone, Johnson, Crawford, and campaigns that have started their pages but have not launched yet. And then another exciting milestone that we're looking forward to in the year ahead is our 200 successful campaign marker. I'm looking forward to celebrating that this year as well. At the end of each campaign, we do have some reporting requirements. And while I won't read through each of these quotes, I wanted to give the board a sense of some of the really great success stories that we have seen across the state. We get these success stories in our reporting. So we have some stories from both project creators, those who are involved in the crowdfunding and promotion of project process, and then those who volunteer to help put these projects together. So we have a project in West College Corner, Indiana, project in Greensburg, and a project in Terre Haute. Program challenges and many opportunities. So we do see quite often that projects do run into some contractor delays and some supply interruptions / weather delays. When it comes to completion, we ask that these projects are completed within a year of receiving grant funds. So we have seen some increased costs due to inflation. More and more projects are raising the full $50,000, which means the full $50,000 match from IHCDA. On top of that, we've just seen an incredible increased demand for funds for this project. So in 2021, we had 30 campaigns, and in 2022, we saw 43. So that's a 30% increase in just communities really eager to utilize these funds. For this reason, we are requesting the annual allocation of funds to go from $1 million to $1.5 million, just so that we can continue to serve more communities. And something else I really wanted to mention is that Patronicity, our partner, is consistently coming up with innovative ways to reach new communities, and they are adding a Google Translate button on their website to be able to provide some accessibility to new community members to add to their fundraising campaigns. Another thing that I'm really excited to share with you, and another reason we've had increased demand for funds, is we reintroduced the My Community, My Vision program this year underneath the Creating Places model. So this program is funded through the Creating Places funding stream. And really the design of this program is to engage young people in leadership training, in-person workshops, and the going from ideation all the way to completion and fundraising for a project in their community. So this year we launched the program in the fall, and we had 7 really eager groups of students who wanted to participate. We have Ripley County, Warren County, Monticello, Mishawaka, Greensburg, Frankton, and Batesville. All 7 of these groups currently have live campaigns and are raising funds. And they launched a couple of weeks ago, and we already have 2 that are very close to hitting their goals already, which just goes to show the enthusiasm that young people can bring. And we're really wanting to inspire students to not only celebrate their communities, but to stay and invest in Indiana. Now comes the especially fun part of my presentation, which I get to share with you a couple of project spotlights. The next 2 projects that I wanted to highlight are actually projects that had one successful campaign and have decided to raise money for a second campaign with us. The first of which is the Monticello River Walk in Monticello. This is their, like I said, second campaign, and they really wanted to build a connection point between the town and their Twin Lakes and riverfront, and just build a starting point for all of the local beauty. And so their goal was $50,000. These are some before photos of what the space looked like before, as well as a rendering of what they were hoping to accomplish. And here's some really beautiful after photos. So they were actually able to raise 2 times their goal amount. They raised $101,844. We still matched with $50,000, but they were able to do even more in this space than they were hoping for originally. And they have plans of furthering this community gathering place as a connection point for trails and further development. The next project I wanted to spotlight is the Putnam County Mural Festival. Many of you will know the really astounding murals in Greencastle, Indiana on the side of some silos. That was the very first project that they did with us. And they decided to come back and do a celebration of murals across the county in both Greencastle and Rochdale. They decided to transform 5 separate wall spaces and utilizing $25,000 goal with a $25,000 match. And these pictures really speak to just how colorful and beautiful this project turned out. They raised their goal with around 220 donors. And they were able also to do some community involvement and engagement throughout this process, and having some students and other community members involved in painting these murals. They are also able to hire local artists, as well as some artists from around the globe. They had an artist from Germany and an artist from California. And now Putnam County and Greencastle and Rochdale are really a destination for individuals across the state and the country to come celebrate this really vivid public art. And this also activated some of the alleyways and spaces where this art is today. And lastly, I just wanted to show you where some of our newest communities are across the state. So each of these stars kind of highlight some of the areas that we've had first-time projects, and I just wanted to briefly highlight some of these fun campaigns that we've had across the state. We love to celebrate local history, so the Markle Log Home Restoration Project took a historical log cabin and made it the center point of a park. We love seeing community gardens, intergenerational spaces where people can come together and grow healthy food. The South Alley activation in Danville took a vacant, really eyesore alley and is transforming it into a space where people can eat lunch, enjoy time together. And then lastly, a fan favorite, the Bristol Community Corn Dog Festival, which celebrates just local history and culture, and brought a lot of people together to raise money for charity this past summer. That's all I have for my presentation. I can pause now for any questions that we may have.
I don't have any questions, but this was a program that started since I've been on the board. And it's fun to see it grow to where it's grown. I mean, they have over $6 million out in all these communities. I think it's pretty tremendous. And we've been consistent with it, and you've seen it. It's a really good story. Great work.
I would echo that. It's wonderful work, and I'm Also, I serve on the State Arts Commission, and so to see the mural project and where you're actually paying artists to do mural work is really critical for arts throughout the state. So it's a great example for others of where we can do public investment that reaps a lot of benefits for the people. Thank you for that.
We're very excited for another year of this, and we have a lot of great things planned.
Well, one question I do have is so IHCA gets credit for helping out.
Yeah, so we actually, almost every single project will do some signage, and we get to be there for the dedication, ribbon cutting, often get to say a few words. So we're usually the largest donor, but some of these projects just really grow in size and scale and will have huge donations.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's a neat program, and I like IHCA being involved, especially as it goes throughout the community, getting that name out. Just, I think it's good public relations and good awareness for housing.
The website that we have where those campaigns live, because the transparency that we have, that you can go in and look at any of these campaigns at any time, from the first one we did to the ones that are live. You can look around the state and see the innovative, creative ideas in terms of how we activate space and embracing our space within our communities. I really do appreciate, and you can see live campaigns. I mean, when we turn the switch on these things, it's right there, and you can see how many donors, you can see what the dollar amount is. So it's all just really transparent for everyone to see. So
Yeah, the website is patronicity. Yeah, it's pretty simple, patronicity.com/creatingplaces. If you need me to send that out or that to you. The other really cool thing is you can see a map of all of our campaigns there. It's crazy to see the map of the state pretty much covered in a lot of regards of how many amazing projects we've had. And even here in Indianapolis, I think there's one every block seemingly. I drive by and I go, there's one there's one there. So it's really neat to see how impactful this investment has been.
Well, it's a website idea too, because you see who's donated, it builds momentum, right? Because everyone's like, oh, we're close to getting there, you know where it's at, and that transparency, again, builds that community sense where you want to hit a goal, and people generally want to hit a goal. If they see something, they have to raise 25,000, if they're at 23,000, then you're going to get over that hump, which is correct.
And so you were saying also that you could see past projects that have been completed. I think what's nice about that is, thinking my own community where I was a rural part of the state, and seeing that, say, oh, we'd like to do something like that, just an idea of what's it going to take, what kind of buy-in do you need from the community. So, I mean, it's an awesome project.
I have two resolutions, and I can read them separately.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I'll start with the first one. Resolved that the board authorizes IHCDA staff to take all action to approve the allocation of the crowdfunding grants, provided that the board is informed of all crowdfunding awards on an annual basis as recommended by staff.
Board, we have a resolution. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, Andy, please.
We have a motion and a second. I'll take the roll. Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Daniel Elliott,
Aye.
June Midkiff,
Aye.
Andy Place,
Aye.
Michael Schockmeyer,
Aye.
Ann Valentine votes aye. Motion carries unanimously. We'll take your next resolution. Yes, resolution.
Thank you. Resolved that the board approves the allocation of development fund in the form of grants in an amount not to exceed $1.5 million as recommended.
Here's a resolution. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion for
June.
approval, Andy, please.
June Midkiff, second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll take the roll. Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Daniel Elliott,
Aye.
June Midkiff,
Aye.
Andy Place,
Aye.
Michael Schockmeyer,
Aye.
and Valentine votes aye. Motion carries. Thank
very
you.
much.
Next up, it's going to be the Richard Harcourt show for a little while here. Richard will now present the VITA of New Whiteland Independent Living Bond Recommendation.
Madam Chair, Board, good morning. So I'm back to you with three requests, but they're all very similar, right? These are all multifamily projects that you all as a board have approved tax credits for, and I'm here just to ask for your approval to issue the corresponding tax exempt debt. As always, this is non-recourse debt. This is not held on our balance sheet. Your approval of these three projects are just the approval for us to be the issuer of the indebtedness. As Madam Chair referenced, the first one is VITA, a new Whiteland independent living project. This one you approved in July of 22. Senior housing, new construction, 102 units, New Whiteland, Indiana, asking for the ability to issue $17,242,369 in bonds.
Questions for Richard? We'll take your resolution.
Resolved that the board approve the Series 2023 multifamily housing revenue bonds, parentheses, VITA of New Whiteland project, close parentheses, pursuant to the resolution attached hereto as Exhibit A and is recommended by staff.
You have a resolution. I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve, Mark Pascarella.
second, Mike Schopmeyer.
We have a motion and a second. I'll take the roll. Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Daniel Elliott,
Aye.
June Midkiff,
Aye.
Andy Place,
Aye.
Michael Schaffmeyer,
Aye.
and Valentine votes aye. Motion carries. Okay. Next, Richard, you will now present the Beechwood Court bond recommendation.
Approved in March of 22. This is 83 units of new construction, multifamily, located in New Albany, Indiana. We're asking for approval to issue $10,185,608 tax exempt dollars.
All right, do we have any questions for Richard? If not, we'll take your resolution.
Daniel, motion to approve.
Oh, we gotta take his resolution
Oh,
first.
sorry.
I appreciate the expediency.
Me too.
That the board approved the Series 2023 revenue bonds, parentheses, Beechwood Court project, close parentheses, pursuant to the resolution attached hereto as Exhibit A and is recommended by staff.
I will entertain a motion, Treasurer Elliott.
Daniel Elliott, motions to approve.
Motion, do we have a second?
Mark
June
Pascarella.
We have a motion and a second. I'll take the roll. Mark Pascarella,
Aye.
Daniel Elliott,
Aye.
June Midkiff,
Aye.
Andy Place,
Aye.
Michael Schaffmeyer,
Aye.
and Valentine votes aye. The motion carries. And next, the Partners Preservation Projects Bond recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This one dates back to July 20th. It is Rehab Family, Indianapolis. It's 38th and Meridian in that neighborhood. 134 units, and we are requesting the authority to issue $7,500,000 in tax exempt bonds.
Do you have any questions for Richard? Hearing none, we'll take your resolution.
Resolved that the board approve the Series 2023 multifamily housing revenue bonds, parentheses, Partners Preservation Projects, close parentheses, pursuant to the resolution attached hereto as Exhibit A and is recommended by staff.
I'll entertain a motion.
Andy
Place, motion Move to approve.
All right, Mark had the motion. Andy, are you making the second?
Second.
Thank you. I'll take the roll. Mark Pascarella.
Aye.
Daniel Elliott.
Aye.
June Midkiff.
Aye.
Andy Place.
Aye.
Michael Schaffmeyer.
Aye.
And Valentine votes aye. Motion carries. Okay, Richard, now you're going to introduce homeownership speakers who will provide a high-level overview of our single-family bond resolution and the mortgage market.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. So you know, as a substantial portion of the business we do at IHCDA is to help first and sometimes second-time homeowners achieve home ownership. And we do that right with down payment assistance, and we monetize those loans in one of two ways, right? We used to sell into the TPA or the spot market, and as we've discussed in these meetings, that market has disappeared. The second way that we do it is we issue bonds, tax exempt and taxable bonds, and we use the proceeds of those dollars to buy loans that we have provided down payment assistance on and put them in our single family bond resolution. Last month, you approved the second series for 2023. You approved 23B with bonds up to $250 million. So as it turns out, our bond team, those folks that help us go to market are here yesterday and today to kind of work through a strategy session. And as it turns out, timing's right, pretty significant. They were here to help us address a handful of challenges. One is our volume cap challenges. But the other two that have surfaced recently, which is, the recent bank contagions, I told them I had to look that word up to understand it. And then the disruption in the bond market. So they were in town, thought it was a great opportunity to have them speak to you just briefly about what's going on in our bond resolution, what's going on in the marketplace around us. They would have loved to have spent 3 or 4 hours doing this. You have some slides that have lots of information on it. They're going to speak for only 15 minutes and at a high level. And so the purpose of it is to kind of get an update and then for you to get reacquainted and refreshed with the folks who go to market with us. So we have some folks here. We have JP Morgan and RBC, Jeff Gertz and Jeff Sewell. We call them Jeff Squared. They are the two bankers that take us to market. We rotate between using JP Morgan and RBC. We have CFX here, who is our financial advisor and who has a fiduciary responsibility to us. Also in the crowd is Evercrest Advisors, who advise us on the 2 swaps that we have. And lastly, Ice Miller, who, as you all are well aware, has done our bond counsel work for years. So we're going to have a brief presentation. Jeff Sewell is going to get up and just give us a quick look at what's going on historically in the marketplace. Jeremy Overhedge is going to give us a little bit more drill down into what's going on in our bond resolution, what we're seeing. And then Jeff Gertz got the hard job, right? He's going to talk about the future and where rates are going to go and what's going to happen here. And then we'll have a little bit of Q&A if the board has time for that. I do want to thank Mark Pasquarella. He's given us yesterday afternoon and today to sit with us. And as you know, IFA is a huge supporter and a strong advisor to us in bond and debt structuring. So thank you to Mark for being with us over the last day. And I'm going to start now with Jeff Sewell from RBC.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Very nice.
All right, I'll just move out of the way.
Thank you.
Great, well, thank you, Rich, for that introductions. Let me further that. My name is Jeff Sewell. I'm a managing director in the housing group with RBC Capital Markets. And although I live in Boston, I've been fortunate enough to work with IHCDA for nearly 25 years now. So collectively, we're going to talk about some of the market conditions that IHCDA is operating under and how they're managing through some of the challenges that they're facing. Spoiler alert. The needs of Hoosiers have never been greater in this regard, and IHCDA is very well positioned to meet those needs. So turning our attention to my first slide here entitled The Shift in the Federal Reserve's Monetary Policy. In pursuit of their dual mandate of price stability and maximum employment, the Fed's basically been doing 2 things. Prior to COVID, we had a very accommodative monetary policy. They've effectively kept the Fed funds rate at 0, but they've also done another thing is by providing purchasing power for securities that are available in the market, keeping rates even lower. So as you can see on the left-hand side of this chart, the black line represents the Fed funds rate, very low, effectively free. And they've also purchased securities, treasury purchases, MBS purchases, and all of that has really helped to stimulate the economy. There have also been many stimulation policies that have been taken, and all of this has turned out to be quite inflationary. So what we see on this is a real change in the stance from the Fed. They've begun to raise the Fed funds rate. As of yesterday, they brought that all the way up to 5%. And they've also stopped replacing these securities that they have purchased on their balance sheet. So they're really increasing rates fairly dramatically, fairly quickly. And that's all to combat inflation. Turning to our next slide. Let's take a look at the market. Rich mentioned that they access capital markets in the housing bond market. Primarily going to focus on the dark blue of these columns. That represents the single family mortgage revenue bond issuance annually, which is the sum total of Rich's issuance as well as all the other state HFAs throughout the country. What we see on the slide is fairly stable from 2016 to 2018 of about $9 billion annually. We saw a nice jump in 2019. We all know what happened in 2020, so we saw a fall off in issuance, no surprise. Since that time, we've seen somewhat stable growth. And if you look at 2023, already in the first 2 months of the year, we've done 2.9 billion of single family issuance. If you annualize that, that gets us up to almost 17 billion in issuance. Just for historical perspective, prior to this, from about 2009 through 2015, single-family issuance was merely 6 billion a year. That's because they were financing themselves the other method that Rich mentioned through the TBA market. But before 2008 was about 12 billion. 2016 and 2015, or 2006 and 2007 averaged about 22.5 billion in single-family volume. So where we're going is higher. IHCDA has followed that trend. And what that trend means is there's going to be more competition for the already scarce volume cap that's available. That reliance on volume cap is probably going to be supplemented with some taxable bond issuance. And you're also going to have to explore some more creative solutions in your bond structure. So what's happened to interest rates? What we've seen is they've gone up. A lot of the actions that have taken, the stimulative policies that the federal government has embarked on, have increased interest rates. That top line, that red line, represents what Hoosiers would pay for a mortgage, and it's gone up. That bottom line, the gray line, is the MMD rate, 10-year MMD rate, which is representative of where Rich can borrow money on a tax-exempt basis. In between is the blue line, that's a 10-year treasury. That's another proxy where Rich can borrow some money at a taxable rate. What you'll notice is that the red line has gone up faster than the other two lines. So back when over the past year, in January of 2022, the spread between what Rich could borrow on a tax exempt basis, that gray line, MMD, and what Hoosiers would pay for a mortgage, that red line, is about 163 basis points. Fast forward to the time when we priced Series 2023A on January 11, the rate, that spread went up from 163 basis points to 324 basis points. So a couple things. That red line represents a real hardship on Hoosiers. For the average IHCDA borrower, their monthly borrowing costs just for the mortgage loans, not to say anything about price of a gallon of milk or property taxes, has gone up by about $500 a month. Now, the one benefit is that because that spread has widened, it's gotten a lot easier for IHCDA to meet those needs of those Hoosiers. In that spread, we have an opportunity to provide a lower cost of borrowing for the first-time home buyers if we're just doing this. And with that, I think I'm turning it over to Jeremy.
Yes. Morning, Madam Chair and Board. My name is Jeremy Ovidich. I'm a managing director with CFX, and we are a municipal advisor to 15 states across the country, of which Indiana is one. I've been working with the folks here at IHCDA for almost 10 years now, and it's a real pleasure to speak to you today. What I'm going to speak about a little bit is drilling down a little bit into your balance sheet specifically. Jeff talked a lot about kind of the national aspects of the market and what's been happening. I want to drill down into and talk about the tremendous success story that you have had over the last 3 or 4 years. And what we are, this presentation, I've got a bunch of pages in here. I want to talk about the success that you've had and to really focus on how you have migrated your financing from the spot market, as Rich talked about, the to be announced TBA market, and how you've migrated your financing of your single family loans to a balance sheet based financing model. And during that time, as you have migrated to that, into this model, you've been able to grow the balance sheet, preserve your capital, and help a tremendous number of Hoosiers in the same time. So we're going to talk about what does balance sheet management mean. I'm sure that you've heard all of the stories about duration matching, SVB, and all of the issues that have come out of the depository institutions, which are underwater when it comes to their mismatched assets and liabilities. We spend all our time worrying about duration matching all the time. And I can tell you that you have a tremendously well-matched balance sheet. And in fact, the business, the HFA industry, has developed a model for financing loans that forces you to be matched on your duration almost all the time. And that's really important for everyone to understand, that you are not like a depository institution which has a claim on your bonds. You are subject to risks as it relates to the assets that you own in terms of principal payments and principal prepayments. But we build in a tremendous amount of what we call optionality to manage those risks and to be able to retire the bonds and take advantage of retiring bonds for your benefit. So that's kind of the big picture here, is that you have a well-matched book and you are duration matched. Rich talked a little bit about the team. We have a few flashing slides here just with JP Morgan, RBC, and us at CFX. And then obviously mentioned Peter Clark, Ice Miller, and then also Underwriters Council. So we have a well-formed team that's been together for a long time working on your behalf. And we know you inside and out. Rich mentioned the two types of markets that you can finance your loans. All start with the same thing. You make a reservation on a loan. Hoosier comes in and says, I would like a loan. I need some down payment assistance. I want a lower rate than I can get out in the market, and you're there for them. But how are you going to execute that? You have two ways. In the spot market, you're going to take that loan and sell the loan out into the market through the TBA, or are you going to bring it onto your balance sheet and own it and earn a spread over time? The TBA is a one-time cash profit, book it, done, no asset liability management, an easy model. But that model only really worked during a period of quantitative easing when rates were very low and the Fed was buying all these loans. As Jeff showed that chart, Fed was buying loans and now they're selling loans. They are offloading their portfolio. And so we've had to respond to that, and we have by developing a robust mortgage revenue model to finance. What that requires is it requires asset and liability debt management, duration matching, and a whole bunch of other asset management techniques and liability management techniques that we bring to bear. The good news is that MRBs are more profitable today, even under these higher rates. So you're able to offer homeowners lower rates than they could get otherwise, more down payment assistance than they could otherwise get from any other source. And that's why we've seen the growth in market share for IHCDA and being able to finance it with a positive spread. This is loans. This is showing the green bars are the total loans that you have offered to your Hoosiers over the last 3 years, and then we're projecting out to 2023. And then the blue bars are how we financed, whether we financed in mortgage revenue bonds, and the yellow bars are how we financed using the TBA spot market. And what you can see is a real migration, a growth overall in the green bars as the total amount of originations are up 104% in the last 3 years. But bond finance loans are up 220% over the last 3 years. That's the blue bars. So the green bars are tracking up, the blue bars are tracking up, and the yellow bars are going down because the TBA market, that spot market, is no longer a viable market for you to finance loans. You could finance those loans there, but you'd be losing money, and that doesn't make any sense for IHCDA's long-term stability. So we're into balance sheet lending. On the next slide, what I want to show here, this slide is maybe the most important slide, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this. On the right side, what I'm showing is a graphical representation of the growth in your balance sheet. The red line is the blue bars. Let's start with the blue bars. The blue bars are your mortgage-backed securities that you have owned and held on your balance sheet. You're holding those to maturity. And you can see that we've grown from, about, let's see, mortgage-backed securities is a blue bar, and then I'm going to put on top of that the yellow bar, which is your investments and accruals. Okay, that's your total asset base, is the blue bar and the yellow bar stacked on top. The red bar is your liabilities. That's your bonds outstanding. So everything above the red bar is your equity. And that equity has started in 2018 at about $143 million, and you have grown overall that balance sheet by about, on a bond basis, 200% in the last 4 years. And you have preserved every dollar of your equity that you started this period with, while also making $41 million worth of down payment assistance loans, which are not included on this balance sheet, because those are forgivable loans, which have no asset value to you under either the rating agency purposes or any time that we are running stress cash flows. So you've generated $41 million worth of goodwill to Hoosiers and managed to preserve all of your equity by growing your balance sheet to up to almost $1 billion from $415 million. That's a tremendous success story. In fact, this growth pattern is one of the highest that we have in the shop. And it's all really a testament to the program development that Tom and Marianne and Richard Stuff have been able to do. And we feel extremely fortunate to be to help you finance this and to manage it. So growth like this requires real asset management and liability management. And I touched on in the beginning about duration matching. This is a little bit of a deep dive into it. I don't want to get too far into it, but I want you to know that we think about duration matching all the time. We know that assets are going to have an unknown duration. We don't know when a homeowner is going to prepay, but what we do is when we sell our bond structures, we absolutely require that almost all of the bonds have what we call a call option on them. We can take a prepayment and we can call down a bond. So we're not left in a mismatched position. We can continue to match the duration of the loans, whether they prepay slowly or whether they prepay fast, in a manner that allows you to preserve your equity and grow the balance sheet over time. And so we spend a lot of time on duration matching. This last slide in the middle, we have all these other risks that we care about. I focused on principal matching and prepayment risk. I want to just talk a little bit about credit risk because that's important too. All of your MBSs that you hold on your balance sheet are federally guaranteed. They have Ginnie Mae's, Fannie Mae's, and Freddie Mac securities. AAA rating in Moody's and Fitch, which is your bond rating as well. We worry about credit risk, but I've got lots of HFAs who run a whole loan model. Now you are paying a guarantee fee. You're paying a fee to offload that risk to the federal government, but it allows you to run a less risky resolution and affords you the AAA. We worry about interest rate risk, we worry about liquidity risk, we worry about counterparty risk, and a host of other risks, because running a balance sheet requires risk management all the time. We've got a great we have a great set of tools and a great set of experts that allow us to do that over time. But, and I'm just going to end with this is my favorite Mark Twain quote for the moment. It's not, it's what gets us into trouble is not what we don't know. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. And we have to be really, really humble in these days about things and uncertainties that we've never even contemplated. We think we understand all these risks. The Feds thought that they had a risk framework out of Dodd-Frank for SVP, which would have preserved banks and all of a sudden 1,000 pages of regulation, and here we are in a situation where they didn't contemplate. So we need to be humble. We have our eyes on the ball at all times, and we're always here to answer any questions, but I'm just going to stop it there. Anything, any questions? More than happy to answer. Okay, hand it over to Jeff.
So I'm Jeff Dirks, Executive Director at JP Morgan. I've been working with the authority now for about 18 years. So I guess that makes me an adult in the authority's eyes. So it would be difficult to talk about going forward without talking about where we are today. We are in a tight cycle, we have been. There are lots of factors that could drive rates lower, lots of factors that could drive rates higher. And what we've done here on the right is to show you that since the beginning of the year, we've had treasuries come down a little bit, then go up, and then drop way down because of what's going on with some of the banks. And to highlight the volatility, this is a very dense chart. We'll break it down in a very simple way. This is a day-by-day trading when we had the bank crisis really start from March 9 to March 17. Those bars there in the middle, the blue shades represent changes in yields of the 5, 10, and 30-year U.S. Treasury bonds. The reddish patterns are the 5, 10, and 30-year MMDR tax-exempt index. And so the heat map at the bottom there is a market implied action of the Fed, Red meaning more 25 basis points hikes, green meaning more 25 basis point cuts. So we start on Thursday on the 9th with Silvergate Capital Corp. Rates come down a little bit on Treasury, and the heat map still shows us that the market is telling us that they're still expecting significant rate hikes throughout the year. On Friday, we hear about Silicon Valley Bank. Treasury rates and bond rates come way down. And now that heat map has gone from a darker red to a much lighter red, meaning that they don't think, the market doesn't think, the Fed will have to do as much in terms of rate hiking. On Monday, we have Signature Bank. Treasury rates come way down again. And now that heat map shifts to green, meaning that the market thinks that the Fed will actually have to start cutting rates. Yeah, so Tuesday happens, there's a little bit of reprieve when we get some good economic numbers. On Wednesday, we have some possibilities of some bailouts for some of the banks, including Credit Suisse. We have rates coming down, rates coming way down. That map turns green. And then on Thursdays, we actually hear about some possible solutions for First Republic and some of the other troubled banks. Rates come up. That heat map goes from a darker green to a much lighter green, meaning that the market doesn't think the Fed will have to cut as much because of the banking crisis. And finally, on Friday, this is when we have the possible talk of the Credit Suisse sale, which ultimately happened. We have some more concerns about regional banks. That heat map turns green again, and the rates in the treasuries also come way down. This is day by day of that 7-day period where we had just tremendous volatility. And that makes our jobs to bringing the bonds to market just so much more challenging. We can deal with high rates, we can deal with low rates. It's the volatility that becomes very, very challenging. And finally, just compilation of all of our latest and greatest forecasts in terms of what's coming forward. The upper left shows what three projections of the Fed funds rate over the next couple of years. The dark blue is the JP Morgan forecast, which calls for one more rate hike followed by rate cuts during 2024. The light blue is the FOMC's own prediction, which shows one more hike followed by a gradual decline. And then the orange is what the market is telling us, which thinks that there won't be any more hikes, but actually will start cutting rates. The Fed will have to start cutting rates during the rest of 23 and into 24. On the right, upper right, the MMD is a tax exempt index, our forecast there throughout 2023. The middle is the US Treasury. You can see from those forecasts there, we have expected declines over 2023 for US Treasury rates, with more decline in yield coming in the shorter maturities at 2 and 5 year, than the longer maturities at 10 and 30. That would still leave us, if these projections are correct, with an inverted yield curve, although not as inverted as it is today. Then the bottom section there is just the computation of the ratios, which is important because those ratios show how effective tax-exempt bonding is. And finally, there at the bottom, our forecasts for several economic pieces of information. You know, real GDP expected to decline over 2023, consumer spending down over 2023, core PCE inflation, all these indicative of a slowing economy. And so I will stop here with my projections and be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the board? Thank you. Next up, I believe, next up is you.
Director update.
Our director update from Jake's side.
There you go. Okay, got it. Well, thank you. First, I just want to thank our homeownership team for the great work that they do. I think clearly, you know, a few years ago, we made some changes to our homeownership programs from a policy standpoint, but also that you saw here and the impact it's had, and then also just our team and the way that they've embraced getting out into our communities and really working with our realtors, working with our mortgage loan officers to make them aware of our products that we have available, to make sure that Hoosiers are using those products. And so I just want to thank everyone in our team, especially Tom and Mary Ann and Rich, for the work that they do and their leadership, because without that, you wouldn't see these numbers that we've seen in the last 3-4 years from the hard work that they've done. So thanks to them. Just happy to report IHCDA last week received an award from HUD to work on reducing radon and other hazardous issues in homes across our state. And we received a $1 million grant. We were the largest grant recipient of this award for radon reduction. And it was also the only housing agency to receive this award that was under the Weatherization Coordination Demonstrate program. So we've coordinated with our weatherization team and our real estate team on our healthy homes to work together to not only ensure that these homes are healthy, but they're also energy efficient. And so Samantha Spurgle and Jolie Pope worked together from 2 different departments to submit an application, a very intensive application. So we were only one of 10 grants that were awarded, the only agency to receive this weatherization coordination in terms of healthy homes grant that we got. So I just want to thank both of them for the work that they do. The other thing that I was going to mention real quick, the general set aside for our tax credit program is set aside. We take 10% of our credits, which allows us to do probably 2 deals a year at the direction of IHCDA and how we allocate those credits. We don't have to follow the scoring criteria that is published. We use this opportunity to promote innovation and to take on some of the major challenges that we know some of our communities have. And so historically, we have promoted linking housing with healthcare, linking it with education and career learning opportunities, transportation. This last year, we put forth an initiative that was very high profile that engaged, gave the opportunity to 2 new developers that were either women-owned, minority-owned, or veteran-owned businesses. And IHCDA would stand behind both of those developers. And so we went through that. We actually had 20 developers respond to that. We didn't want to turn our back on the other 18 emerging developers. So we reached back out to them and asked them what we could do to continue to help them build capacity to undertake a tax credit development. And so we, thanks to Civ on our team, have developed a training for those developers specifically related to the tax credit program and understanding how to develop housing using the Section 42 program. So we have this training now that we're offering, so I'm just really proud of the team. The 2024 tax credits that we have under our current qualified allocation plan, next week we are going to host a public meeting with our housing partners to solicit feedback on what innovation, what community challenge, how should we prioritize these 10% of these credits for next year. So I'm excited to hear what some of the ideas might be from some of our housing providers and how IHCDA can support taking on some of the, some of those challenges that housing may not be a silver bullet in taking on a new community, but certainly can influence some of the community challenges that they have beyond just housing and how we link housing to some of these other areas. So, so we will be taking a public meeting and feedback on that next week. So, and the last thing I just want to make the board aware of, and I'll be open to feedback from the board on this one. Prior to the pandemic, we would go out and have our board meetings across the state. They weren't always here. I know we've been throwing you some musical chairs, making it challenging for you to get here.
Different floors in the building.
Yeah, we're actually going to make
the
it.
building.
If you think that's hard, just wait till we go on the road. So what we'd like to do this year is have a couple of board meetings this year like we used to on the road. Traditionally, we've had these in properties that have been financed by IHCDA, because certainly we have had the opportunity to create and to create affordable housing that's also mixed use, that has space available for a public meeting such as ours. And so we'd like to do that again. I'd like to have probably 3 meetings between maybe June to the end of the year on the road. If you do 2, that's fine. Somewhere around 2 or 3 We did have a few developments that we had in mind that we already reached out to prior to the pandemic, prior to us going virtually, that we could reach out to see if they would still be willing to host one of our meetings. So I just share that with you because I want to make you aware that we are planning to have a few on the road public meetings, board meetings somewhere. Happy to take suggestions. If you like, I can share with you. I'm happy to share with you where we're looking at going here in the next couple of weeks or so.
Well, hi, everyone, even though I obviously have struggles finding into this building, but I, for one, love that idea. See, the last week I've been to the Ohio River, Dyer, which is northeastern Indiana, and then in the middle in Fulton County. So I love being on the road, so I think this is a great idea. And I say 3.
Great. All right, I'll go for it. I'll try.
Great.
So that's my update for this month.
Great. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the board?
Madam Chair, we do have the resolutions that we'll be passing around to you members here for signatures, and then I'll be sending to the other members through Adobe Sign.
Great. Thank you.
Wait for those.
All right. Hearing no other business, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
Second. Want a second?
Second.
Thank you. Your meeting is adjourned at 11:15. Thank you.
Thank you.